How's it going, everybody? My name is Ben from the Ben and Bev channel. Today we're going to be talking about Loki Episode 4, the Nexus Event. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button below, and make sure to hit a like if you want to spread the good word about Loki, God of Mischief.
If you've not seen the first 3 episodes of the Loki series, you can go ahead and check out the playlist up here.
Did y'all see that Shang-Chi trailer this week? I can't believe Abomination was in that. Absolutely wild.
The episode starts out by showing us a flashback scene in Sylvie's life, back when she still lived on Asgard to when she was first pruned by the TVA. And intriguingly enough, the person that actually brought her in was Ravonna the Renslayer herself, who at the time was just a Minuteman. We then switch over to the chaos inside of the TVA as they try and figure out where exactly the two variants ended up, as well as what exactly happened to Agent C-20 and what the TVA has done with her, if she's returning or if she's been terminated. Leading to a little bit of instability with emotion when it comes to B-15 and Mobius, both being rattled by some of the things that the variants said and trying to figure out if they really did have another reality in life before all of this. The scene switches to Lamentus with the two Lokis discussing what it really means to be a Loki, with Sylvie alluding to losing as being the main thing that makes Loki a Loki, and with Loki saying that it's more about not dying and the perseverance of your goals and ambitions, whether you get to them or not. And as the two begin to face their imminent demise, they move closer to one another and begin to make contact, which actually causes a massive Nexus spike that we see over in the TVA on the timeline. It's a vertical line that's going straight up, much different from the small phrase that we've seen before. And right as all of Lamentus begins to explode, we see 2 TVA portals open up and the 2 Lokis are apprehended.
I think last week's episode was actually the first part of this week's episode, as the two tie together very nicely and make a very complete story. And while I guess they weren't really doing that much while they were on Lamentus and they weren't really progressing the story at all, I really enjoyed last week's episode and the tone and feel of the whole thing.
With Loki and Sylvie now apprehended and being kept in separate cells, they're both interviewed by different members of the TVA.
Or I guess Loki's interviewed. Sylvie's really just being held by lots of guards.
Within that conversation with Mobius, Loki stays very true to himself and continues with the lying and misleading, but every once in a while a little bit of the truth comes through, and you see that register in Mobius's eyes as he starts to question his own reality and his own rights. Dissatisfied with Loki's consistent untruthfulness, he then sends Loki to a time cell, where he is stuck within a memory inside of Asgard where he cut Lady Sif's hair, and she slaps him and reminds him that he's going to be left alone forever. As cool as it is to see Lady Sif again, she really only has the one set of lines as the moment just keeps looping, and no matter what Loki says to her to get her to change her mind, it doesn't really work. All he really discovers is his own narcissism.
So that's why him and Sylvie have that type of connection.
Mobius then heads in for a meeting with Ravonna, discussing the closing of the case and how the variant Loki will soon be terminated, it'll all be over, and we can go back to everything
As normal.
And while they're having this discussion, Ravonna brings up to Mobius a very important question. If you could go any place or any time, where would you go? Well, he doesn't have an answer at the moment. He has a really good one later, and he uses this opportunity of conversation and meeting to actually trade his telepad with hers, so he can get a much bigger glimpse of the truth.
And the actuality of the situation.
We then switch to a scene of B-15 in the hallway, kind of questioning herself, and knowing even less about the situation with C-20, and being concerned about her friends and the well-being of really everyone in the TVA. She decides that she needs to confront Sylvie on her own and figure out the truth for herself. While Mobius is researching the telepad, he comes across the interview with C-20 as she says how everyone inside the TVA is a variant, and they were not really created by the Timekeepers, leading Mobius to Loki for direct answers. The other side of the storyline, we have Sylvie and B-15 visiting the Roxcan disaster again as they discuss Sylvie's enchanting abilities and how she cannot create memories, but use ones that were previously there before and edit them.
Proving to another TVA member that they in fact don't really know the truth.
I also thought it was really funny how right before Mobius starts to help Loki escape, he tells Loki,
"You don't have to be bad. You can be good if you want to. You can be whatever you want to be."
As Mobius breaks out Loki from his time cell, they begin to plan and figure out a way to release everyone in the
Time Variance Authority.
But sadly, Mobius' freedom is short-lived as he is incinerated by Ravonna, by his own boss. And right before he's incinerated, he looks Ravonna in the eyes and he says,
Hey, that question earlier, is any place, any time that I could be, I would be in the time and place that I was supposed to be, in the life that I was supposed to have.
Man, that hurts. After incinerating Mobius, Ravonna takes Loki and Sylvie to the Timekeepers for their final reckoning. So when they get off the elevator and they take them to the room that the Timekeepers are within, there's the 3 of them sitting at the end of the room, and everything else is very dark and surreal and glowy. It almost looks a little bit like Exegol from that last Star Wars movie, or maybe even like the Lair in Shazam. But as the Timekeepers begin to question our Lokis, B-15 pops up using her telepad. The newly freed B-15 actually helps Loki and Sylvie escape, and we get to see a really cool fight scene in this environment as the Timekeepers just sit back and watch. I will say the Timekeepers were really cool. I was looking at them, and even though they were alien and very ethereal and surreal looking, I thought the CGI was a little strange, or maybe that they moved a little bit robotic, like puppets almost. And while the Timekeepers watch, both of our Lokis succeed in disarming everyone and end up confronting the Timekeepers directly. One of them looking at Sylvie and saying, "You're also a child of the Timekeeper, don't you know?" And those were his last words as Sylvie slices off his head, only to reveal that they are in fact all android puppets. The Timekeepers, the people at the top that we have been looking forward to dethroning, aren't even real. Electronic bodies, animated by an overseen and much larger power.
So after the realization that the 3 Timekeepers we saw are not in fact real, I'm starting to wonder if they're going to be using Ravonna the Renslayer's comic book origins with Kang the Conqueror popping up as the actual boss for the TVA. It's so hard to tell what villain they're actually setting up. It could be Mephisto, it could be Kang the Conqueror. There's a lot of different reality-bending villains they could tackle, but with her in particular, Kang definitely seems like the most logical option. And with him supposedly popping up in the new Ant-Man and Wasp movie coming out in a couple years, that sounds about right.
And it's amidst this sheer disappointment and confusion that Loki has a brilliant idea. Let's cause the Nexus Event again. As he moves close to Sylvie, grabbing her hands, you think they're finally going to have their moment. And then Ravonna sneaks up from behind and incinerates him. Sylvie and her then fight, ending with Sylvie holding the incinerator to Ravonna's head, demanding to know the truth. All of it. Yet again, a massive cliffhanger.
But don't worry, there's also a mid-credit scene.
He awakens, thinking he's in hell or that he's going to be dying soon wherever he is, and as he looks up, he sees a very destroyed world, reminiscent of the dream world in Inception. Skyscrapers just falling to pieces in the background as the whole world implodes. And he sees 3 other variants. I wasn't sure if they were all Lokis, at least 2 of them were. The one of them had a hammer, so it could have been a Thor variant. But there was also a kid Loki variant with a crocodile, and then Richard E. Grant's super cheesy, comic book accurate old man Loki.
Love that they threw Richard E. Grant in here as old Loki in the very traditional kind of campy outfit. Very funny middle credit scene.
Absolutely bonkers. This week's episode once again kind of threw everything for a whirl, and while we may have resolved one of our issues, we end up with 100 other ones. With all these conflicts and crazy pocket universes and characters, there's no telling what happens next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to shoot a comment below if you have any thoughts on Loki, and we'll see you next time. Ben and Bev, out.